Um, our topic today is going to be watching an old episode of Monday Night Raw from 25 years ago. We want you to join us. It went down on January 3rd, 2000. So fire up your Netflix, head on over to the Raw Vault. This is the year 2000. It went down on January 3rd. Of course, if you're looking to hear what Eric thought about the WWE debut on Netflix, it's available for you now at 83weeks.com. We did a live reaction show this past Monday immediately following the show, and it is available and totally free for you right now on YouTube. But we're going to today be talking about Raw in 2000. But before we do, I wanted to at least run through a few things that have happened since you and I hooked up on Monday night after Raw on Netflix. We saw The Rock on NXT. He showed up and he was announced, of course, on Netflix that he would be at the NXT show, which was there in LA. And it sold out immediately once he made that announcement. It was a small building. They only needed like 300 tickets to sell, and they did. And The Rock came out and cut a big promo, dropped the F-bomb 4 or 5 times. So maybe you didn't hear all of that, but there's some unedited stuff floating around. If you really want to hear him drop the F-bomb, I don't know why you would, but there it is. But almost 1 million viewers checking out the NXT program on CW. I guess it's no surprise if The Rock's there, people are going to tune in.
Yeah. And he brought a lot of attention to CW, which I think is probably the reason why he made that appearance. Obviously, he wants to help out WWE, but one of the best ways he could help build the WWE brand is by bringing more attention to the CW show, NXT, and mission accomplished, man. Mission accomplished. It'll be interesting to see what next week's ratings are as compared to, say, the previous 3 weeks before Rock's appearance, just to see, how much impact he really had or residual impact he had.
I'm interested to see where they go with The Rock from here. There's been lots of reports. The rumor and innuendo is that at least for now, the whole Roman versus Rock feud and match is on hold. Any speculation that it was going to be The Rock and Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, that seems to not be the case. It feels like, based on what we've seen this week, that The Rock is probably going to sit this WrestleMania out. And respectfully, I don't think they have to have him. This is maybe the most loaded WWE roster of all time. Like, if you're just fantasy booking, you could come up with really big time main events on both nights. That being said, even though I don't think The Rock will necessarily have a big feud and a match at WrestleMania, it would be hard for me to imagine him not even making an appearance at WrestleMania, right?
I don't see it, man. The guy just bought almost 100,000 shares of TKO stock. You think he's not going to try to move a needle anytime he's got the opportunity? I don't think so. I think he loves this. I think it's good for Dwayne Johnson, the actor. I think there's no downside. Now, if he's got a movie project and he's, contractually not able to participate in WrestleMania, I get that. That's business. But I think unless that's the case, I wouldn't be so quick to write anything off at this point. I think the level of storytelling and the confidence in their creative approach, there being WWE's creative approach, a lot of little Easter eggs that I saw, or perhaps I wanted to see, which is kind of the fun part of all this, right? We talked about that last week. You can read so much into it, and it's one of the things that makes wrestling so much fun as compared to other forms of entertainment, is because when it's done well, it's very unpredictable and surprises. And I hate to use the term swerve because it's been abused so much, but plot twists. Let's call them plot twists. Nobody's bastardized that term yet, at least in wrestling. But the plot twists and the little Easter eggs, and there's so much out there right now that I would manage my expectations and enjoy the ride, because I think anything's possible at this point. I wouldn't exclude or include Rock or any matchups that may come of it, because I think they got the creative horsepower to pull just about anything off.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for WWE and what's next for Peacock. I don't know if you saw this, Eric, but Billy Corgan's Adventures in Carneyland is finding a new home on Peacock. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, I would have thought that any wrestling related content on Peacock would be WWE exclusive, but we know that WWE is looking for a new home for their archives outside of Peacock, and Peacock knows that they're searching for that. If WWE winds up finding a deal somewhere else and they come off of Peacock, do you think that creates an opportunity for another brand, whether it's the NWA or it's MLW or it's TNA, or is there room, do you think, on Peacock's slate of shows that they're going to be offering for some other wrestling promotion if WWE makes a move away completely?
Possibly. I mean, I think it's the bigger question is there a wrestling company out there that has enough steam behind it, enough viewership, enough of an audience that will come along for the ride to Peacock in this case? If they've got a substantial audience that's loyal and their business appears to be growing, I could see it, because content's content and wrestling works. I mean, I was thinking about this, Conrad, kind of a different subject, but along the same lines. You know, we're reviewing a Monday Night Raw from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the context, 25 years ago seems like forever. It's a generation, technically. And in some cases, it feels like 5 minutes ago, depending on the context. But if you look at, from a technology point of view, how far we have come in 25 years. We've come so far that if somehow in catering, which is where I like to spend a lot of my time in WWE, I would have been sitting there having some roast beef, maybe a little mashed potatoes, salad. The desserts were really good in WWE catering, so it would have been hard for me not to grab a dessert, in all honesty. But if I'd have been sitting in catering, enjoying my meal, talking to other people in catering, I would have said, you guys know what? Here's my crystal ball. 25 years from now, there's going to be this thing called Netflix. It's going to allow WWE to distribute their show live worldwide. I would have probably gotten escorted from the building, required to take a piss test. They would have wondered what kind of drugs I was on. We've come so far. But as far as we've come, if you step back and kind of take a macro view of the wrestling industry since the 60s, I've said this before, and I think it's really worth saying now. Professional wrestling has always been on the leading edge of the evolution of content distribution. Before cable came along, wrestling was the most watched show in almost every major market every single week. The little studio shows with 50 people in the audience and horrible production and smoke-filled venues, as they've been referred to as. They were just small studio shows. And when they were produced in larger events, they were dark. I mean, I don't have to describe it. You all know what they look like. That was throughout the 60s into the 70s. And then cable came along. So wrestling went from being one of the most popular shows on local television. Cable comes along. Professional wrestling becomes one of the leading programs on all of cable and has maintained that status since the beginning of cable television time. And then pay-per-view evolved out of cable, and professional wrestling had been on the leading edge of all pay-per-view content for decades. And then streaming, OTT came along, and Vince McMahon, you can criticize Vince. There's a lot to criticize, but you cannot criticize his vision and his focus on achieving things from that vision. And the OTT, abandoning pay-per-view, which represented probably a minimum of 25% of their net revenues, abandoning that format and taking a new approach with OTT is what set WWE up for the Netflix opportunity that we're seeing now. My point in all this is professional wrestling has been on the leading edge of television content and programming throughout all the different forms of distribution. Syndication, cable, now streaming. And if you look at, when I first went to work for Turner, the Turner organization, somebody wrote a book think it was by Porter Bibb, who is the author. It was a book about Ted Turner. And in that book, one of the things Ted talked about professional wrestling and why he got involved. And one of the things he pointed out, it was a short paragraph or so, but it was clear that Ted viewed professional wrestling back before he had a lot of money, before he could buy the MGM library, before he could be competitive and pay top dollar for second run programming. He had to buy whatever he could afford. And Ted knew that professional wrestling, although it is not, spit shined, it's not always pretty compared to other forms of entertainment. It works and it's cheap, which is why in this long-winded way I'm saying to you, I think there is an opportunity for TNA or NWA or any small independent-ish small television footprint wrestling company out there to end up on a Peacock because it works. It can work. And if somebody's out there like TNA has got, there are certain things about TNA. Now I'm just from very much on the outside. I don't follow TNA on a regular basis, but I kind of keep my finger on the pulse a little bit. They're making moves. They're doing things that imply growth, or at least suggest that they've got their eye on growing their business. Sometimes that's all it takes to make someone comfortable placing a bet on you. So I do think because wrestling works, if you're Peacock and you need that, you need that traffic, that professional wrestling historically has one of the most loyal, committed audiences of any form of content out there. So I think there is hope, and I think there is a chance, regardless whether WWE re-ups with Peacock or not. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for wrestling companies that are positioned to take advantage of it.